All right, so let's take a look at something further. So I think the best way to show you this is kind of how I stumbled on it. Right, so as I talked about before, we had that whole slider end world thing going on, right? So for instance, if I happen to change this to slider end world, actually, we can use polymorphism. I really only need to specify it here. So there's slider end world, and let's say I'm going to use animated turtle there as well. Might as well use the two together, so we'll make sure that each of those are in there. So we have that, and so we can take a look and see. Notice if I go ahead and start running this, I'm holding down D, holding down D. It's not doing too bad. Now, if I happen to change this to sort of almost turn off the or make this as fast as it's going to go, now when I come back and I'm hitting A and D, it's actually not doing anything. Okay, so this is a very subtle bug that can occur in this kind of situation. Basically what the bug is, it has to do with focus. As soon as I click on the slider itself gets focus, and the rest of the panel can't sort of grab the focus away from that. Now, could I code around that? Yeah, I probably could. I could probably set some stuff up to make the window actually grab focus, but realistically, what this points to is the fact that there's actually a better way of doing this. Okay, so KeyListener, for listening for keys using KeyListener is actually on the primitive side. There's better ways of doing that, especially when you're using swing. Okay, so the way that you go about that is as follows. So I'll get rid of, well, actually, we can leave those in, I guess, to prove that that stuff's going to work. I don't really care so much about the turtle part, but certainly the slider end world helps to demonstrate why or where things go wrong. So swing, in addition to allowing us to use key listeners, has this notion of key bindings. Okay, and they sort of talk a little bit about when key bindings are appropriate and so forth, different ideas and all of that. Okay, so it's an alternative to, notice, an alternative to key bindings is using key listeners. Key listeners have their place as a low-level interface to keyboard input. And so, the point is that it might actually be better for us to use key bindings in this particular situation than key listeners directly. Okay, so how do we go about doing that? Well, it is a little bit on the complicated side. Not that it's difficult. It's simply there's kind of a few pieces that you need to take care of. Okay, so the first part is basically you need to get a J component. Okay. So the component itself, so the component allows you to get what's called an input map. Okay, so here's kind of how it works. If we take a look at, if you take a look at the documentation for the world class, which actually, let's see, we probably have someplace in here. There they are, the media comp library. Oop, I didn't want to download that. Anyways, so if I go down to the world class, oop, that's not good. Maybe here. Blocked by an extension. Yeah, probably this one. Let's try. Yep. So notice, the MediaComp world class extends J component. Okay, so there it is. That's the class that's going to have the appropriate map objects for us to work with on this. Okay. So the way that we can make use of that, again, I'm going to kind of leave this. Well, I'll leave that just like that for right now. The only thing that I'm going to change is I'm not going to. I won't have the adding the listener in right now. So it won't actually function, but it will simply be there so that I can make use of it when I want to add the appropriate key bindings. All right. So from world, which we know is a component, what we can do is we can call for the input map itself. Okay, so we call get input map, and then we can pass along some, there are different sort of types that we can get here, and the one that we want is, notice when, let's see, double check. Yeah, when in focused window. Okay, so this input map will basically allow us to deal with key bindings for as long as the window itself is focused, or any of the components in that window happen to be focused. Okay, and so the type of that, in fact, is input map, and so I'll just do something like that. Now let's see, did it actually figure out? Really? I'm kind of curious why it's not giving me an error. It looks like something's there. Variables never used. Yes, I know. Oh, okay. Yes, it imported Java Swing .star, so that's why we're getting input map without anything. Okay, so once we've done that, then what we can do is something like the following. We can say, okay, in the input map itself, we're going to add something like this. We're going to say add keystroke dot get keystroke, and we'll pass along the appropriate key code, which is in the key event class, vk virtual key _k. Okay, so that turns the static get keystroke method turns that into a keystroke. That's what we need. That's what the map is basically indexed by. But I'm not actually done. So I also want to have inside here. I want to have a couple of things. So let's see. So I can have believe those are the modifiers. I don't have any modifiers to deal with. This false, you can actually see, right, basically tells us, basically says that for the keystroke, we're not going to require that the keystroke is being called on the key released. So we want it to work the way that our existing code work, that is to sort of work while the key is pressed down. That's why we need the false there. Okay, and then finally, what we need is some ID. Okay, now the ID is just a string. It needs to be unique. So I could have it something. I could have it be something like this: turn left. Okay. Let's see, and yeah, I probably need a new there. There it is. And oh no, wait, no, I don't. I actually probably need. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we've added our import for key event as well. No, that's still not. Sorry, that actually isn't what the issue was. What is the issue? Cannot resolve method get keystroke. Let's see. That takes those things. Did I forget something here? Oh yes. Sorry. There. Okay. So let me kind of indent these, etc. So the map basically has a key value. The key value is this particular keystroke for the A basically continuing to be pressed down. And that maps literally to this string, turn left. Okay? Have an extra one? Yeah, it looks like it did. Okay. Then, from that map, we need to, we also need to do the following. Say action map AP is equal to, and then for the component, we're going to get the action map, like so. Okay, so we get the input map, we get the action map, and this is where we can put what actions to do indexed by those particular strings, right? So it's a two-step process. We have our input map for the key binding, that is whatever the keystroke is, it maps to some form of string, and then we have our action map that takes that string and gives us an actual action itself. Okay, so I can say AP, down here, put, and so I then need, again, to make sure I carry over that particular string. And, and then I need an action. Okay, so let's take a look at this. If I come over to here, so let's go over to JComponent just so we can kind of take a look at this stuff, right? So as I said, there's the, we've been using the get, in this case we're using get action map, right? Notice that returns something called, something of the class action map itself. And so the put, where is it? Put, here we go. Put takes an object as the key and an action as the value. Action is an interface. Right? Now, action, the action interface, notice, is actually kind of involved, right? So there are a bunch of things that you, in fact, need to implement. However, once again, it turns out that there is this nice abstract action class that is sort of like adapter is. That is, basically it provides sort of empty implementations for the appropriate things. And then we can, and then there are some that we are required to kind of implement ourselves. Okay, so let's take a look at making use of that thing. So, I'll go here, and I say, I want a new abstract action. Okay, and you'll notice the main thing that we need to actually implement is the action performed method right there. So in this particular case, basically what I can say is that, okay, so this is supposed to be the turn left. So again, I can refer to the turtle object out there and tell the turtle to turn negative turn degrees. Okay. So that's how that works. Yeah, there's a few steps there and everything, and we're going to see a way of kind of cleaning up that code, make it much easier to do. So just bear with me. So let's go ahead and run this. Let's just verify that that our code is actually working. So if I come over here, if I'm holding down A, we're good, right? The turtle is spinning to the left. That's great. If I hold down D, we haven't built that one in yet, so that one's not working. But here is, remember, this is the part that wasn't working before. So once I've activated that, I am getting an error. Yeah, we are still in fact seeing that that showed. What is this error event queue class cast? Oh, yes, right. I know it. There's. It has to do with the fact of every time every time the slider is changed, it goes and tries to tell the turtles, here's your default speed. But since I'm using a regular turtle and not an animated turtle, that's why we're getting that error. Just so we can verify that everything else is working properly. Let me go ahead. Right, so there, I'll return that to animated turtle. And so once again, now I'm doing that. Now when I come over and change this to fastest, we see that yes, if I still hit A, I can still spin him. Okay, so the focus issue basically is now fixed. Okay, but that does certainly leave us with some code that, well, frankly, is a nightmare, right? I mean, compared to KeyListener, which was this nice, concise, single key adapter thing and a little if statement, and then we're good to go. Now we've got these whole input maps and all this other stuff, and then wrapping keys, right, doing keystroke, call this static method with this other weird thing. Again, it's a whole lot of stuff, okay? So let's kind of factor out the stuff that is constant. So I'm going to create a public static void method, and I'll call it simply add key binding. Okay. Now, it's going to take a few things. It's going to take the J component that we're adding the key binding to. We'll call that comp. We're going to take a key code as an integer. Why? Because this itself is an integer. Then we're going to take the ID string, right? Remember, we had to actually use that in two places, there, and we had to make sure that those match up. This, incidentally, is a great opportunity for an error to creep up. If I try to copy and paste this code and make changes, invariably I'll forget to change one of those and then end up with weird behaving, non-functioning code. Okay, so we're going to sort of fix that in our little helper method here as well. And then I'm going to say, basically, I just want any method that has a single parameter that kind of matches this action performed. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say we need an action listener. Okay, so there it is, and I'm just going to call it Lambda. All right. So, here's basically what we're going to do. I'm going to take this code, I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to basically place it up here. Okay, now I'm going to start changing this to do a few different things. So for instance, the variable w that I had, I'll do a refactor on that and change that to the component that is sent in. Okay, so when we call add key binding, automatically the user will basically it will get the appropriate input map and the action map for us. So we don't have to worry about those things. I'm also going to kind of put these things together here, like so. Right, so we have our getting of the two maps, and then we have our code for setting everything else up. We'll see kind of how that works in a minute. All right. Then, so we're putting into the input map. It's not always key event A. In fact, it's, well, whatever this thing is here. So we're just going to come here and say that's the key code. Right. The whole point is, instead of having, to type all of this syntax every single time we want to create one of these things, all we're going to have to do, we pass in the component, we pass in the key code, the ID, and so forth. Right. So here, of course, is the ID. And same thing here, ID. Okay, so far, so good. Right, so there's there's what's in the map, right? The keystroke and the ID, and now this. But then we get down to here. This is where it gets tricky, right? Because I want my add key binding to work for any type of key that is sent in. That means literally what I have to be able to do is pass along code, special custom code, basically pass along a method to this. That's what the action listener does. That's where that comes in. Okay, so here's how this is going to work. Essentially, what we're going to do is we will have here, we will continue to deal with that abstract action, but then we're just going to say, okay, Lambda action performed, right? And maybe I'll even name this differently. Let's do that. So I'll do a refactor. And yeah, let's just call it action listener. And we will pass along that particular thing. Now, what did we do there, right? It's sort of weird because we take an action listener and then we create this abstract action that calls the action performed, right? So action performed calls action performed, but calls it on a different object. Okay, so first of all, that's the concept of delegation, right? So we have this anonymous object right here that gets created, and it delegates its action performed to the action performed of whatever gets passed in. You might think, wait a minute, what? Is the room spinning? I'll show you. Okay, so let me show you how easy this makes this now. Okay, so now that we have this, we don't actually need this code any longer. Okay, now with our nice helper method, I can do something like this. I can say add key binding, okay, and we're going to add it to W. And then we'll specify the particular key event that we are interested in. I'll give it a string, so maybe I'll try something like this, turn left. And then what I need, well, is an action listener. Okay, now again, action listener is a really simple interface, right? It's very simple because essentially there's only a single method to deal with, right? Let's see, can I find this now again? Action listener, there it is, right? So there's action listener, one method. That's it. That means it's a functional interface. That means I can use the Java 8 Lambda expressions for implementing that. So I don't even need to implement an anonymous class here. I can now use the following. Say, okay, I have a function, an anonymous function, that takes a parameter called event, one parameter, and here's the code for it. There. That's it. Okay. Because of our add key binding doing all the kind of nasty syntax heavy grunt work, this is all we need to do to be able to say, oh, okay, when the A key is pressed, turn the turtle to the left. And then similarly, let's add some additional ones. So there's the D. And we'll call that turn right. And we can do that. So now we're turning in that direction. And you know what? Let's do another one. I mean, it's so easy. Why not add a third to the mix? So this one I'm going to do W. And we will say this is going to go forward. And so... And we'll say something like... forward pixels. And I'll hit enter, and let's see, we want a constant field. There it is. That's good. And I can keep this. I can keep this kind of small. Now, a couple of things to note in my testing. If you start getting below 3 on either of these, the behavior starts to get really wonky. You'll sometimes see it just not moving and so forth. Again, I think it has to do with round off in the turtle class. So basically you want to kind of keep it at a minimum of 3 for these. But this, again, can go higher. We can say we're going to move forward 5 or turn by 5, etc. But anyways, let's see what this actually does, right? So now when I do this, I can go ahead and run. And so there's A, and there's, I'm sorry, that was D. Now there's A. Now I'm holding down W, right? Then I can go to D, and I can hold down W some more. Oop, let me hit some A. Sorry. Lagging a little bit. Keep holding. There we go. Okay, now hit some W. Right, and if I happen to change this like so, we see, yes, it's actually moving faster, which means that realistically, we don't want animated turtles here. We don't really need the slider, and so we can go back. But I only had those in to show that we did, in fact, fix the problem that we were having. Right, so now if I come back over here, let's see, we'll go to, we're just going to use a plain old end world, and we'll use the plain old turtle. Don't happen to care about either of those. The other classes. And so now, there it is. We can move along. Move along. And so forth. Okay. Kind of cool. We can also do one other thing. Suppose I decided to not do this one. Maybe what I want instead is for the turtle to constantly be moving. Well, let me get rid of these. Okay. So again, let me say that. So I want the turtle to constantly be moving, basically forward, and so we can simply control where the turtle is going to move based on using the A and D keys. All right. So what would that look like? Well, essentially, what we need is some sort of event to tell us that a small amount of time has elapsed and that it's time to update the position of the turtle. Okay, basically we're talking about building an animation. And the way animations, the way movies work and so forth, is you see a picture, and then you see it for a very short period, and then you see a slightly different picture, and so forth. So we need to basically build that here. Now the good news is, in the swing package, there is the timer class. All right, so let's take a look at that. Here's Java Swing, and timer. There's the timer class. And The thing to note, when you create a timer, you specify a delay and you specify an action listener, right? So, creates a timer, initializes both the initial delay and between event delay to whatever that delay is, and then basically takes an action listener. So the action listener will get called however many milliseconds we specify in the delay. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Here in main, let's just start real simple. Timer equals a new timer. Again, we need to specify some delay, so 1000 is once a second. And we need to specify an action listener. So I could certainly do something like this. In Java version 2, this would totally be acceptable. Right? I could say timer tick. All right, so let me go ahead and run this. And we see nothing. Why? Because the timer needs to be started. Okay, so we've created the timer, but then we also need to say, go ahead and start. Okay. So now, notice, timer tick, timer tick, timer tick. So once a second, this method is going to be called. All right? So, how do we then control the turtle? Real easy. T, forward, the number of forward pixels. And maybe I'll make this a little bit shorter. So this will be twice a second, right? Once every half second. Let's see what happens there. So there's the turtle moving along, and I can sort of control where he's going and so forth. I might say, oh, you know what? That's probably a little too slow. Maybe we want to do it 4 times a second. See what that looks like. And, you know, we can even bump it down further if we want, 10 times a second. And so now the turtle is under my control in terms of the direction, and it's under the computer's control in terms of moving forward 10 times a second. So that gives you a pretty good idea of playing around with different kinds of listeners within Java.